Okay, today we're working on 2005 Dodge Neon 2.0 liter. Have it as a blown head gasket. About 4,000 miles ago it started exhibiting some knocking, and now recently it's having a starting issue. So did a compression test and found that cylinders 3 and 4 both have low compression. So we got cylinder 1, 2, 3, 4. 3 and 4 both had about 60 psi, whereas 1 and 2 had about 160. According to the book, should be like 175 to 225. So since the two cylinders are adjacent to each other, the theory is there that the head gasket is blown between them. So we'll be replacing that today. Do my best to try and walk you through this. Looking online and doing some research, I didn't see any how-to videos on how to do this. So while it's my first head gasket job, I figured I'd try and share it with the world. Yeah, there's some other videos and research that you want to do ahead of time. I'll post those on links below so that you can see that. There's a good master mechanic, I think one from Chrysler, that talks you through what you need to be thinking about when you do this. In general, this job is not going to be an easy job. If you haven't done a lot with cars before, you probably should look at bringing it in. The estimate for me to have this job done was about $900, so I figured just do it myself, considering the gasket and stuff's pretty cheap. But anytime you have a head gasket issue, your bigger question though is what's causing the head gasket, or what caused the head gasket to blow. So doing a little investigation of that too once we get everything apart. So make sure you do your research ahead of time, have plenty of time to do the job. Unfortunately for me today, the high outside is about 1 degree Fahrenheit here in the UP, so a little bit cold in the garage, but we'll make it work. The first task is to jack the car up, so get it up on jack stands. I got 2 jack stands under there. You'll need to remove the passenger side tire, so do that before you put it up on jack stands. Once you get it up, the next job will be to remove this plastic panel here so we can get at the crank. There's 3 10 millimeter bolts. You got one kind of up here on the top left, one up here underneath this lip, and then there's another one down towards the bottom. So you have to get on the car to get those. Okay, once you get the 3 bolts out, there's just one little plastic connector here that was going up in here. You gotta just pull that out, and then yeah, as you can see, it just kind of falls out. And there you go. Now the car is off so that we can get to the crank. There's just a couple side notes. During this project, you want to make sure you have an area set aside where you can put all your disassembly parts. Keep all your bolts together, label them if you need to make sure that you know where everything goes when you got to put it all back together. For this whole project, following the Haynes manual here. If you don't have one of these, you really should pick one up. Really kind of walks you through in general how to do a lot of the steps. So I'm on section 2A13 right now, where it literally walks you through how to remove the cylinder head. So that's how I figure out what steps I need to take in addition to doing research online. So just as another kind of quick fact for you. The next step for me, I'm going to be removing the negative here off the battery, and then got to go in to the fuse panel here and put that tab up there, and then you can get at the fuel relay here. So take that, just kind of pull that out for now. And then we got to disconnect the starting coil and get this all apart, because next step, or the first step in the manual, is to get the cylinder 1 at top dead center. So that's on the compression stroke. So what I like to do there is I like to get the valve cover off so that I can look at the valves going up and down, so I can know that I'm on the compression stroke. So I'm going to right now get the coil off with these 4 bolts. It's got 2 looks like 10 millimeter bolts to get the coil off. Once you have the coil off, then you can pull all this out, disconnect this connector. This connector's got one of those like safety, you got to pull this little red dude out with like a slot screwdriver, and then you just compress this tab here down and you're able to pull it out there. Then you just pull off the plug wires, get those out of there, then you can move the coil off. For the valve cover, looks like we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 on each side, so 10 millimeter bolts that you'll just kind of gradually even out, lift that whole thing out, and then that'll get us to our valves and our rocker arms and camshaft. Okay, negative on the battery is disconnected. I got the the valve cover off. So got it in here. They have these specialty bolts that don't actually come out all the way, so you'll just have to keep spinning them until they're loose and then pull it out. There's two vacuum hoses that are attached, one in the back that you got to take off, and then one on the end right here. You got to take those off, and then pretty much what you do is you just kind of take it and you like tilt it up and slide it out, and then it'll expose. We got your rocker arms here, so you got your exhaust arms in the back, your intake here in the front. Again, cylinders 1, 2, 3, and 4. I just want to make a quick note here. I found online a lot of people talking about engine knock, or more so engine tick, when they started, especially when it was cold. They'd start it and go tick, 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 tick. Well, what I found that to be is these rocker arms. They have like a little hydraulic thing that uses the hydraulic oil pressure to lose or get rid of the slop in your valve timing. Well, what happens is if those little hydraulic nubs go bad, they're like under the rocker arm here, then you start to get that tapping because the hydraulic pressure doesn't equalize right away. So what you have to do is you have to take off basically your rocker arm shaft here, and then slide off your rocker arm and put new ones on. Now they'll probably recommend that if you're going to do it, you should probably do them all at the same time, so you get even wear on this arm here that they rock on. But just an FYI for those of you who have that ticking when you start, you can fix that by replacing these as well as replacing the shaft. I think it's about $20 each for each intake, so 8 intakes at 20, and then $40 each for each exhaust, and there's 4 exhausts, so it's kind of an expensive job, but that's just FYI. I want to make another note here while you got the valve cover off. If you get some dirty spots or some areas that you can clean up that maybe got some debris or something in them, you should take this time now to clean those out while you got it out, so that you don't have that extra buildup hanging around near your valves. Okay, step 1, position the number 1 piston at top dead center. Okay, so going over back here, number 1 piston is here. So to do that, we first need to take the spark plugs out. You probably want to do this actually before taking the valve cover off, because what you want to do is loosen each spark plug like a quarter turn or so, then take compressed air, blow it out, blow each of them out, and then remove the rest of them to make sure you don't get any of their crud in the cylinder. So yeah, if you already have it off, just make sure you cover it with some plastic or something like that to make sure that you don't get dirt or debris in and around this valve area. Okay. Once you get the spark plugs off, you got to get your compression tester. Okay, take your compression tester, spin it down into cylinder 1, and then you're going to turn the crank down here. Okay, turn it manually with a large wrench, and watch the compression gauge. And you're going to watch, and when the compression reaches its max point, that means it's near its top center. We don't necessarily know if it's on the exhaust or compression stroke, but once we get to there, what we can do is we can take a wooden dowel and stick it in the hole once we take our compression tester out, and we can find the exact top. Now I watch the valves to see if I'm either on the compression or the exhaust stroke. Okay, so I got my spark plugs out, got my compression tester in. Effectively, you just push it down the hole and then spin it until it gets snug there. If you don't have a compression tester, you can go to like an AutoZone or something like that, and they have like a loan-to-tool program where they'll make you pay a deposit that you get all back, but then you can borrow it for 90 days or so. So that's an option if you don't want to buy one. Effectively, what we're going to do now though is we're going to set the compression tester in a place that you can see it, and then go down and manually crank the engine over with a big wrench until you see the compression build up to its peak here on the compression tester. Now what I do is, so the first stroke is going to be compression, then exhaust. So I watch and I wait to see when my compression reaches its max after my exhaust valves have opened and closed, because if my exhaust valves open and close, that means I know that's the exhaust stroke, and then the next stroke after that is going to be my compression stroke. So not that I think it really matters if you have it on top dead center for exhaust or compression stroke, but if you want to find top dead center on the compression stroke, that's a good way to do it, by just watching your your valves there. Okay, so I got my wooden dowel in there now. I took the compression tester out there. I didn't actually see any compression increase with my compression tester. Again, I know it could be because of the gasket as well. So what I'm just going to do is I'm just going to watch my exhaust lifter, and once it goes down and then up, so that I know that that's the exhaust stroke. The next stroke that I'm looking for is going to be my compression stroke. So I'm just going to watch this rod, and I made a little mark on it with a pen, or you can do it with a Sharpie or whatever. You can't really see it, but then you'll be able to see when it reaches its topmost position. And this is just like a little wood dowel. I mean, you can get this. I should cut it off a little bit, but you can get this from Walmart or any hobby store or anything like that in the craft section, and you use that just to see where the piston is. You want to make sure you use something wood for this, not something metal or sharp, so you don't damage the piston. Okay, once you get it top dead center, you want to confirm that your camshaft timing marks are correct. So the camshaft, as a reminder, it's running along the center of here. It's what your rocker arms are timing off of. So it's running right down through the center here. And you can look down in here, that little plastic cover there. Inside is where the timing belt connects to the camshaft. So if you can kind of look in there, you can see the sprocket ever so slightly. And if you look on the edge of that sprocket in there, you can see the timing mark, and you want to make sure that that's lined up with this little plastic groove here. So if you look in there, you're able to see kind of that little notch. There's like a little kind of like a notched out section of the sprocket in there. So that's what you want to just confirm, make sure is lined up once you get the number one cylinder in top dead center. Then you're all set for that part. Okay, back to our guide here. Number 2, disconnect cable from negative terminal. Did that. Number 3, drain the cooling system and remove the spark plugs. Okay, move the spark plugs already. And we got to drain the cooling system. Okay. Okay, so on the underside of the car, I'm looking at the bottom passenger side corner of the radiator. There's a little drain plug there that drains the radiator. So you gotta open that, and that'll remove what's coolant you have in there. So you want to make sure you have a bucket there to collect that. According to the book, 6.5 quarts of coolant. Probably all that won't drain out though, because some is in the block and things like that. But you want to be ready to capture all that coolant so it doesn't make a mess. Well, so ideally when you turn the nut there to drain the coolant, there's a little fitting here that you can attach a 5/16 inner diameter hose to, and ideally if that's not plugged like mine is, it'll all conveniently go in your pail. If it's plugged though, it'll just drain out that nut's hole. So once you get it drained, then we can move to the next step. Okay, once the coolant's drained, put the plug back in, get the hose back out. Next on the list is to take the intake manifold off. Okay, first step in removing intake manifolds, you got to relieve the gas pressure. Technically how you're supposed to do that is start the engine and then pull the fuel pressure relay that's in here, as I showed earlier. You just gotta pull that off. But since my engine won't start, I guess I could have run it before. So maybe this is something just FYI you want to do. The very first thing is relieve the fuel pressure. Pretty much my plan: just disconnect where the line comes into the fuel rail, and just have a bunch of paper towel around to pick up the spraying gas. But that's what you want to do to get the fuel pressure relieved. Okay, the next steps here. Got to remove the air intake from the throttle body here. Okay, so just one hose clamp down in there. Okay, once you get that off, then you got to disconnect the fuel rail here. Okay, so I just got the connector wrapped up. It's just got these two little plastic tabs that you can take like a needle nose pliers and squeeze them together. That allows you to pull this off. Just kind of wrap it up. It may leak a little gas. It's important with anytime you have something that leaks gas that you clean it up right away. It's very dangerous to have gas just sitting there. Just let it evaporate. Can be very dangerous. I've also connected the upper radiator hose here, or disconnected that just so it's going to give me some more room, and I'm going to have to disconnect, looks like the thermostat here. There's 2 bolts for that, one here and then one down in there. They look like 10 millimeters again, so disconnect that so I can pull that off. Okay, upper radiator hose off. You can see the thermostat there. Next up is going to be removing fuel rails here. Okay, so I got 2, looks like 13 millimeters there to take off. Then I got to take off the map sensor plug here. And continue on our way. So fuel rail is loose. You got to get the injectors out. They got these little red tabs, so you got to get like a slot screwdriver or your finger and pull up on those tabs. Once they're up, you can press them in and wiggle them a bit, and then the injector plug will come off. For the map sensor, also got a little red plug. Got to get like a slot screwdriver. Kind of what I did was off to the side like this and lift up a little bit, pull it towards you. And that'll allow you to press in on this tab here on the top, squeeze together, and pull the map sensor off. Okay, once you have the injectors disconnected and the rail bolts out, 2 rail bolts, you can then pull the injectors out. Maybe a little snug. You got to be careful. Don't breathe on it too hard, but you may have to pull a little bit to get them to kind of pop out. But there you go. There are the 4 injectors. Make sure you take those and set those in a nice safe place. You really don't want to damage them, especially the tips here. Very, very fragile and very critical in terms of not getting clogged and things like that. Once you do that, pretty much what we're just trying to do here is just get rid of everything and make room so we can pull the intake, this black piece, up and out. Okay, so there's one more. There's a brake booster hose, connects down here by the map sensor right there. That runs back and along and up to the brake booster back in here. So you got to disconnect that hose as well and get it out of the way. Once we have that out of the way, we should be close to taking the intake bolts out here to get the intake manifold off. Okay, there's one other thing you got to take off. There's a little support bracket. So down in here behind the intake, you can kind of see it there behind that hose. There's it's kind of this one point there. How about that? You go down in, so like right there. There's a little support bracket. It's got 1 bolt in there, 10 millimeter bolt. Really kind of annoying to get to. I used a 1/4 inch drive with a deep dish, and that seemed to work well. But you got 1 bolt in there that you got to get out, which will then allow you to move to taking the 5 intake bolts out. So they look like there's one there, one there, one behind the wiring here, wiring harness there, and then down in there is your 5th one. You take that and pull the intake out and continue on. Well, it turned out to be a little bit more fun than I was hoping for. To get all of this whole wiring harness out, you had to go one down in there and get, you can kind of see right there's the map sensor, but then if you go down left of that, that's the AC compressor clutch. You got to get that one off. And remember, these are all like those little red tabs, so if you can get like a screwdriver on the other side to push the tab back, that starts it a little bit, and then you can kind of get in there to pry it open more. But had to get that one. Then what was next? You inside here had to get the knock sensor. So the knock sensor, it's kind of hard to see, but it's basically straight down from the center. So if you're looking at your 4 intakes in between 2 and 3, if you go straight down in there and you access it from underneath, is how I get it. You'll just see it. It's bolted right to the block down there. Then you had to go get your starter, so I had to take off the positive on the starter there, and then as well as the negative on the starter, and then also the actual plug on the starter. Okay, so in the end here you got AC compressor clutch, And then actually, sorry, this is AC compressor clutch. This is your MAP sensor. This guy is your NOx sensor plug. Then here we got the starter plug. Then going up more, we got positive and negative from the starter, and then that continues to go up to your injectors, which continue to go up, and then you got your starting coil plug here. So that's everything you got to get off, so that you can get everything completely out of the way. Now you're ready to remove the 5 intake bolts and pull the intake out. Quick note on the starter there. So it's got that little red plug that sits over top of this nut, or this screw and bolt here thing, nut and bolt. And then just an FYI, that's a 13 millimeter, and you have to kind of get it like a 13 millimeter deep dish. And if you take your wrench and kind of stick it down in here and turn it, you can kind of get at it. It's a little tight, but 13 millimeter deep dish work best. So there's a second air intake support bracket, the one that I got from the top, and then there's another one here underneath. This is driver's side, right by the air inlet throttle body connection. So you got to get another 10 millimeter bolt out of there. Okay, intake's off. I ended up just taking off, instead of going at that last bracket mount from the bottom, instead of going at this one from the bottom, I just took the intake hose out that's normally here, and then I could access it from the top really easily. So that's how I got that out. Okay, now once the intake's off, the next thing they say is to put duct tape over the holes. Unfortunately, since there's only a high of 1 degree Fahrenheit here today, my duct tape really isn't sticking to anything. So what I've done is just kind of put paper towel wads in there, and I'm just going to try and be really cautious and making sure I don't get any dirt or debris in there. But the next step in the manual is to do the timing belt. Unfortunately, in this thing, the timing belt really sucks, because it's in here, it's in this little plastic cover. But in order to get at that plastic cover, you gotta take off engine mounts, take off this front panel, first support the engine by a jack or something. Then you got another main support bolt down in here. So the next step will be starting to remove all that, because we got to remove the timing belt here, right? Because the timing belt goes up and it times the cam up top, so it's connected to the cam. So we can't pull the head off with the cam until we get that timing belt off that sprocket. So next step will be starting to remove these components so we can get at the timing belt. Okay, if you haven't done so already, you want to make sure your parking brake is on. You can chalk your wheels if you can. Because the first step here, we're gonna basically we gotta loosen up this crank bolt. It's gonna be tight, so a breaker bar, and then, as my dad always says, it's nice to have a big screwdriver, because we're gonna use the screwdriver to wedge in the pulley here so that it doesn't move as we loosen it. Before I loosen it though, I'm gonna make sure I take off the serpentine belt first, as well as the other alternator belt. So there's 2 belts on this. There's not just one serpentine. You got your one belt here and then another belt in the back that runs to your alternator. Take both. Okay, so to get this top belt off, you need to take a wrench, and the belt tensioner is in there. You can kind of see the wrench is on there. So you'll take that and you can pull the wrench, and then that'll loosen the belt and you can pull it off the crank. And then once it's off the crank, then you can easily go in and pull it off the rest and just pull it on out of there. Okay, so from the top in again, if we go in, so I got one 13 millimeter wrench there that's sitting on the adjustment screw for the alternator belt, and then if you see there to the left of that is another 15 millimeter wrench that's on the actual tightening bolt. So you use the 13 millimeter wrench to adjust how much tension you want, and then you lock it down with that 15. So if we're going the other way, we need to loosen the 15 and then loosen the 13 there to get the tension off the alternator belt to get that. Okay, got the crank bolt out. Had a little bit of problems, some things that helped me. I smacked it with a rubber mallet, try and loosen up a bit, And then you really got to make sure with your screwdriver that it's not up against the plastic timing belt cover. Okay, the timing belt cover is pretty much right behind that pulley. So you got to make sure that your screwdriver is up against a part of the block, not up against that timer cover. Then you got to pull. It's pretty tough, but then you can get it off. Once it's off, you want to get your pulley puller. So this one I got just as a loaner tool from AutoZone. You just ask for the Chrysler Harmonic Balancer Puller. It comes with a couple different lengths of adapters. You'll need the longer one, 5.5 inch. You put that in, and then just tighten it up and make sure that your clamp, your puller jaws are on the pulley good, and then you'll just spin it with a wrench to pull the pulley off. Okay, once you use the puller to pull the pulley off, should look like this. Next thing, you'll want to remove this lower strut. This lower, it's like a torque strut here, engine mount. To remove that. And we gotta take power steering pump. Don't have to take it off, like you don't have to do anything with the hydraulic lines, but you gotta take off. It's got 2 bolts here that mount it on the right hand side, one there and one there. And then it's got 3 bolts that you access through the pulley here. So you have to get like a deep dish and stick it in those holes and turn it to get all 3 that mounted on this side. And you basically be able to pull this unit off, set it off to the side. And we're going to have to replace, or not replace, going to have to take out this top torque strut too. Because the engine's got basically 4 engine mounts. 2 for torque, this one, the one on the bottom. And there's a big through bolt that's down in there that we'll have to get at. That's the main engine mount, and then on the other side there's a transmission mount underneath the battery where it kind of like pins it on both sides, and then these prevent it from torquing. So unfortunately, to get at the timing belt here, pretty much got to take all the engine mounts on this side out, this other metal piece here, just so we can even get at even the timing belt. So like I said, next up, move the pump reservoir and pump, and get those 2 torque struts out. Alright, so to get the pump out, basically there's three bolts on the right side here. 1, 2, and 3, and then 3 bolts on the left. Note that there's 1 and then right below it, and then if you're looking to the side, you basically got 1, 2, 3 bolts that you have to get out. But you have to access those bolts through the pulley on the side. So you have to stick a deep dish through there, and then that's how you get these longer bolts out. Okay, so 6 bolts there, then you can get the pump out. You have to loosen this hose holder so that you can actually lift the pump out. And then you got up here, wherever this wrench is, you got one bolt you got to take out just because that's holding these hoses on. So you have to get that out so you can move it out. So then you can just take it, lift it up, pull it off to the side, so that you can keep working. Next up, it's going to be this upper strut. Okay, so this upper strut's got a bolt here, and then a 3 bolt there. So those 2 to get the upper strut off. Okay, upper torque arm is off. So next would be the lower. I'm not really 100% sure why they say to take out the lower. I mean, because really what you're going to be doing now is you got to lower the engine and raise the engine in order to get at the bolts that hold this plate on. Because this plate pinches the timing cover and the block and the head. So there's 3 bolts, if I remember right, last time I did this, that you got to get at from the side. And so you raise and lower the engine so that you can get at those bolts. But I think it'll still raise and lower with this torque arm in place. So I'm going to leave it. You may want to inspect yours. I replaced this one not too long ago, and you start to see cracking. So if you see in this rubber area here, if you see cracking or if it's broken, you probably should replace yours anyways. They're not too expensive, like 30 or 40 bucks. So that's something to look at. So now effectively what I'm going to do is I got my jack underneath with a block on the oil pan. Okay, so use a piece of wood or something there so you don't damage your oil pan. And I'm going to just be raising and lowering the engine with the jack so that I can get access to the bolts that are in this plate here. There's through bolts here that go all the way through into the block and head. So I'm going to get at those now. Sorry, I forgot to note, in order to be able to raise and lower the engine, you have to, there's a little plastic cap here you got to pull off. And there's a Torx, I think it's T50, T55, that you got to get Torx bit in there, and that's what takes out the right engine mount, okay? So you need to take out that right engine mount, which mounts right into here. So that's what you got to get at in order to get that bolt out so that you can then raise and lower the engine. You're pivoting it relative to the transmission mount, which is again over there under the battery. Okay, so here's just an example. I got that main engine mount bolt out. Pretty long guy, but got that out, and then I got my jack lowered so that goes and it exposes. If you look up right there, that's the bottom of that plate that's sandwiching the timing belt cover. So you got to take that bolt out. While you're down here, you might as well take these two bolts out. This one here and this one, the bottom timing cover bolts. You can see my timing cover got cracked. That was trying to get the pulley off, crank pulley off. So anyways, while you got it down, get those bolts out, then you'll jack it up, get the other bolts out, and you're on your way. Note that that main engine mount bolt was a T55 Torx. These bolts here are 15 millimeter, and then the timing cover bolts are 8 millimeter. Okay, so you're going to get the bottom bolt of this plate out, then you're going to jack the engine up, and you're going to say, okay, well there's one more in here I got to get, kind of in the front. Yeah, so you go and you get that one out, and you'll be like, okay, well apparently I still got one more, and then you'll look and there's one back here. You see my wrench is kind of on it, and you're going to look at it and you're going to say, I don't know if that's right. And unfortunately it is right. That's definitely a bolt you got to get out. So I took this off here to try and get around to it, jack the engine up. I mean, unfortunately you almost pass farther than you think you want to, because what starts to hit is back in there, your exhaust starts to hit. Kind of, you can see kind of the exhaust starts to hit there, and then you get some bunching back here, but you just gotta work it enough to get it out. Unfortunately, what I remember from last time, it's not even just about getting a wrench in there. So if you have a low profile wrench, maybe that'll help, but you got to get the bolt out too. So you pretty much got to get it high enough so that this lip here, if you can lift this up, then this lip here has got to be there as just as high as this bolt, so you can even back the bolt out, because the bolts are long. I mean, this is one of the bolts, so that's got to come out of there. So that's what you want to be thinking about, trying to make sure you get enough room to get that out. But once you get it loose, you can see I got it loose now. I just got to get the bolt out, and then I'll have access to the timing cover. Okay, there's that plate. I was sandwiching the timing belt, so you can see the timing belt there, the tensioner, and there's the water pump. Okay, so it's camshaft on the top, goes straight down to your tensioner. We believe it's a mechanical tensioner, and then from there it goes down to the crank, and then right there's your water pump. If you made it, I mean, to get that out, pretty much I just had to kind of wiggle it. I kept the back bolt in as I tried to pull out, because I couldn't get the back bolt out. So I kept the back bolt in, not like screwed in. I got it loose, and then but I kept it inside of this plate here as I kind of wiggled it out. Yeah, there's really no trick to it, or there's really no good way to describe any trick. You just got to kind of do your best. But I will note at this point, if you made it this far, replace your serpentine belt tensioner while you're here, because otherwise you have to replace basically this far just to get to the serpentine belt tensioner. I had to do that like 2 months ago. So replace your serpentine belt tensioner while you're here. And if you're doing this job, you might as well do your timing belt and your water pump and your belt tensioner while you're here, if you're doing this whole job anyways. For for me, I just did the timing belt not too long ago, so I'm going to be reusing the timing belt. So I'm going to mark it so that I know which way it's spinning, so that I can put it on and its wear patterns can stay the same. Then, yeah, my next step will be taking the timing belt off after I mark it. Okay, so before you remove the timing belt. You got to mark it showing which way is clockwise, because you got to put it on the same way you take it off. Make sure that your crank mark is lined up with your timing mark on the timing belt cover right there. Also, it needs to be aligned down here. So you see a little arrow there in the back? It's got to be lined up on the crank sprocket right there. So you got to make sure those two things are aligned prior to taking the belt off. And as soon as you take, well, the whole time you have the belt off, you have to make sure that they do not move, because it's an interference engine, and if they move, you're in big trouble. So don't let them move. In terms of the belt tensioner, to get that off, you got a 13mm wrench here. Get a picture of it on the nut. That's a lock nut, and then mine has just like a 1/4 inch drive. Some of them are 6mm, but you put a drive in there, and that's what you use to actually put the tension on. And then you use the wrench there to tighten it or loosen the lock nut that actually holds it. Then you got your water pump down there. Water pump doesn't matter if it's lined up; it's just going to run. But make sure your timing on your cam and your crank in the bottom are good. Okay, timing belt's off. According to the book, the next thing is to take the head off, loosen the head bolts. But that doesn't seem right to me, because they still got crank sprocket or camshaft sprocket that's got to come off in order to get this guard off, timing belt guard. To get the timing belt guard off, we got to take the tensioner off. So it looks like there's one right there, 10mm bolt for the guard. Then the tensioner itself has one bolt that holds it on, kind of in the back corner. Let me see here. Yeah, you can't really quite see it there, but you see how it kind of makes like an X, so this is the upper right of the X, that's the bottom right of the X. Well, down in the bottom left of the X is where the other bolt is. So you got to get that off, and then the tensioner and this cover should come off. Then you can get better access to the sprocket to get the cam sprocket off. Okay, so the mechanical tensioner had 2 bolts, bottom left, bottom right, and then there was 2 bolts left in the cover. There was 2 right by the water pump that had to get out. Those were 8mm. These guys here are 13mm. So keep going, taking the rest of the cover off. Okay, to get the crank or camshaft sprocket off, got just a chain wrench here with like a shop towel or something around the sprocket to not damage the sprocket, and then a breaker bar on the bolt. Ideally, you do this with like an impact wrench or something like that, but I couldn't fit my impact wrench in there. I didn't have like an angle or anything to be able to get my impact in there, so I did it this way. You just want to note, if you do it this way, that you got to turn the cam sprocket back 2 or 3 teeth to not prevent damage, right? Because top dead cylinder's 1, and you don't want to move any of the valves when top dead center's there, with 1s on top dead center. So the idea is just move the teeth back 2 or 3, and then turn it. So there's so that's how you want to do that. Okay, crank sprocket's off. Notice it's not just a press-on deal; it's bolted, but it's a slotted thing. So you want to make sure that if that little, it looks like it's attached, but I don't know if your pin tries to come out. You want to make sure you watch that and hold on to it. Anyways, so we got that all off now. We can start to see the head's getting a little bit more exposed. We got some mounting in the front here, front left. We gotta get that hose off. Looks like that hose has got a mounting bracket right there we gotta take off. There's some mounting brackets on the right hand side here for all these hoses and stuff. Gotta get that off. Then going around the exhaust manifold, looks like we gotta take that off too. And I'll come back to that in a second though, once I get the rest of the stuff off. Okay, so to get this hose off here, Mine was kind of stuck on, so you maybe use a screwdriver or one of the pullers to get in there and kind of around it to loosen it a bit. But I had to take off 2 hose clamps. It's 1 bolt here, and then another support bolt back here behind the dipstick. Got to get all that to get this all loose. Next up, I lowered the engine with my jack to kind of level it out. It was tilted back, bunching it up back here. So I lowered the engine to get some more room. We got in here camshaft sensor right there. So that's got a connector we got to get off. And then there's this bracket here that holds hoses. We got to get that off as well. Okay, once you get the guard off, you got your cam sensor. You got to get off there. And then there's also another sensor down below the cam. Just kind of straight down in there. You got to get that one off. That clears the right side of the head. Front's all good to go. The left side's all good to go. So now we just got the back. Looks like there's an exhaust sensor here. Probably maybe temperature sensor that we got to get off. Then there's a shield here. Each shield, it's got one, looks like a 15 millimeter here. And then I guess just to note that this one here, and the guards ones on the side, those were 10 millimeter. So get that shield off next. Okay, guards up and loose. One 13 millimeter bolt holding it there. And if you want to get that sensor off too, it's another 13 millimeter. And then there's 2 10 millimeters down there and down on the left. Yeah, my suggestion with all of those is to get some PV blaster, some WD-40, start working on those a couple days ahead of time and get those off. And then once you get those off, you even got that many more. I'll see if I can spin this around and show you. So in here, so this is one of the exhaust. You can't really see. Let me get some light. Okay. So you got these exhausts. There you go. You can see it there. So there's 2 10 millimeter bolts on each exhaust port coming out there. So you want to also see if you can get those with some PV Blast or WD-40 ahead of time, because they got a lot of heat cycles, heating and cooling. They can get stuck pretty easy. My suggestion with all of these too is just to be really careful. If they're pulling too hard, just wait. Give it some more juice, or try and tighten it. Actually, tighten it and then loosen it, tighten it and loosen it. I had that with this back left 10 millimeter one here. I had to tighten it, loosen it, tighten it up again, loosen as much as I could go, put some penetrant in there, tighten it, loosen it, and just kind of slowly work it out. So you got to be careful with that, because you really don't want to break the head off the bolt there, because I don't know, then you're in for a real bad day. So that's my suggestion there. Next up, getting those 4 exhaust ports. My other suggestion is to have a 6-sided socket too. Don't do a 12-sided socket. You don't want to round the corners on your bolt. Okay, the head's ready to get loosened now. So you can see there's the exhaust ports. So you got those 2 bolts, 10 millimeter bolts on each one. They came out pretty easy for me, but I had also been lubricating them up a bit. The one in the back, far bottom left here, was a pain, because there's this guard that it's like hitting, so you got to kind of watch out for that. I was able to push the guard out of the way for the back right one, but this back left one I had to use a different wrench for, so just heads up on that. Yeah, so to remove the head, effectively what they say, you got these 10 bolts here. They look like 15 millimeters. You gotta, so tightening order is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Okay, so that's tightening order, and but to remove it, you're going to go obviously in reverse tightening order. So a quarter turn at a time until they're all hand loose. Quarter turn at a time until they're all hand loose. Start with number 10 here, then number 9, then 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Again, 6-sided socket to remove the head bolts. I'm going to start with a breaker bar just to get them loose. Quarter turn at a time in reverse tightening order. Okay, once you got the bolts out, head bolts out, you'll want to take them out, and if you're going to reuse them, you'll need to make sure that you note which hole they go in, because you need to put them back in the exact same spot you took them out. I guess I will say though, if you're doing a head gasket job or really anything, they recommend that you replace the bolts, like 30 or 40 bucks or something like that. But so you probably want to replace them anyways. But just FYI, if you're going to reuse them, you want to make sure you put them back in the exact same hole they go. But for me, I'll be taking them out and I'll be replacing them. So I'm going to take them out, set them aside, and yeah, then just triple check, make sure that there's nothing holding the head on, and then lift it out of there. Okay, well, the head's off. So you want to have a nice soft place to set the head, some wood, some plastic or something as to not damage it. Remember, it's aluminum head, so you got to be really careful there. So for me, for now, I'm going to hold that off in the head a second. I want to come look at my pistons. Again, you can see the exhaust intakes there, the exhaust ports there. So I got those bolts out, but anyways. So piston number 1, top to the center up as expected. Looks like there's a little bit of buildup on there. So I have to kind of look at that. And then next up here, cylinder number 2. Oh, wait a second, try to get you a better viewing angle there. So kind of look down in there. Number 3. 30 again, and right there was my problem. As expected, between 3 and 4, that gasket blown. Get you a better angle there, but that critical spot right between broke apart. So there's that. Yeah, so I want to clean all that up, and I suspected or heard maybe that these things have cracked pistons. I can crack the piston sometimes, but the piston on this one doesn't look too bad. I mean, there's a little carbon buildup there, but I don't see any severe cracking. Anyways, so clean all that up, get the old gasket off. The next step on my head is I'm going to check it for warp. So turn it over on its side, then use a machinist straight edge, or at least a really good straight edge, to check for warp. I'll show you how to do that. So, here's a look at it. There's the gasket. Cylinders 1, 2, 3, 3 and 4. You can see where 3 and 4 blew out, causing all my issues. If we go take a look at the pistons, so see number 1 there, a little bit of buildup on that one. In 2 here. Let me see if I can get a better angle in the light. There we go. Build up there, but nothing too. Okay, that's 2. Moving over to 3. So 3, this is the one that we thought may have a crack. I don't know what that is. That's just like a little chip. Or what? But some gum filled up in there. Anyway, so that's 3. Gotta take a look at what that is in a second. Number 4. Now, around. Okay, that's engine. Here's the head. So I put some gasket remover. I'm trying to get that cleaned up in there. So here's the heads up. Valves look a little charred. Okay, back looking at cylinder 3 again. There was that kind of looked like maybe a crack up in that right, and I moved around. I didn't feel anything there. I think it must have just been some buildup. The only thing that I don't know about is, oh, back it up. There's like a little, see that little nick there? Kind of right on the rim, right in the middle of the screen right now. Moving it, it's right in the top right hand corner right now. That's like a little nick. I don't know, it's like a, I don't know, when I feel it, it feels kind of like a little nick, but I don't know if that is something that I should be worried about. But anyways, give you kind of a better view of what I'm looking at here. Build up there on the bottom. Okay, it's another shot of the bottom of the head. So we're looking at cylinder number 1 here, 2, 3, and 4. So the issue we were having with the knocking was this cylinder. The valves, the exhaust valves on 1 and 2 look really hot relative to 3 and 4. So I don't know what that necessarily means, but this one kind of looks like it's even degrading a little bit. I don't know. Well, maybe not degrading, but it's got just some sort of buildup on it. In terms of other than that, I mean, this is the worst carbon buildup, and that's cylinder number 1 again. So just kind of give you an idea of what I'm looking at here. Try and clean it up a bit, and then I got a square, so I'll just check it a little bit and see if it's close. Alright, well, while doing cleaning on the head, I think I found what caused my head gasket to go. So again, camshaft sprockets here, so cylinder 1, 2, 3, and 4 had the issue between here. And if you look right down in there, you see it's all chewed up. It's all broken and pitted out. So that's a bummer. Okay, let's look at the cylinder wall. So cylinder wall on 3. So they don't look like, I don't see really anything on cylinder 3's wall. Sorry, just trying to look. Yeah, I mean, I see a little oil, but besides that, they look smooth. They look smooth both on 2 and 3. Obviously 4 is up, so I can't look at that one. Okay, cleaning off the carbon buildup. Got number 1 looking good. Walls are all around number 1 look good. Walls all around number 4 look good. You got 2 and 3 here. Cleaned them up with some just scrubbing bubbles, bathroom cleaner, and a little copper soft bristle. Just kind of scraped it around. You know, just kind of spray it, let it sit, scrape a little bit, and you know it came off pretty easy. The deposits, excuse me, weren't too bad. I was looking at it, and I mean, I got them clean enough. I can actually read the serial number on it. You probably can't read it on here, but up in that topper part, right about, let me see here, right about in there, you can read the serial number. Says 16_012, their part number. But in terms of any cracking that I may have been concerned about, like I don't see any. So these little marks here, there's little marks, kind of, I think they're maybe placement marks or something. You can kind of see it again right there, but all the cylinders have that. Must just be positioning marks or something, but no signs of any cracking that I can see. See if I can get a, debris. So this was cylinder 3, the cylinder that was knocking. Cylinder 2. Pull it up to look at cylinder 1 and 3. So I'm rotating clockwise to rotate the cylinders, so I'll get 1 and 4 up and take a video of them. I've also used some gasket. It's gasket solvent material to get any leftover gasket that's on there off. I'm going to get some shots of the cylinders on 1. So this is cylinder on 1. Cylinder wall on 4. Just a little dirt. We're good. Okay, 1 and 4 clean. Just wanted to kind of zoom in on 1 and 4, give a closer look there. Okay, so there is, looks like a little bit of a pivot, or pitting right there on 1. Rest of the cylinder, just a little bit I didn't clean up. Okay, we'll look at 4. No, it's got about 122,000 miles on it. Okay, a little guide on how to check for warpage. So the first thing that you want to do is clean off the cylinder head. You should, you can also do this on the block, but I should do it on the block to see if your block's warped as well. But with the aluminum head on this thing, it's more likely that the head would warp. But what you want to do, clean it off. I used some bathroom cleaner, so some scrubbing bubbles. You can get all kinds of stuff, but that worked well for me. And then on the tough stuff, I just scraped it with a copper, a soft, like a brass or something would work too. You just want to be really careful not to scratch this up real bad, and don't want this to fall apart too while you're scraping and getting your intake or your coolant ports or anything like that. But anyways, so you'll need a straight edge for this, preferably like a machinist straight edge or something that's precision ground, because your measurement's only as accurate as your tool here. But the idea is that you'll take your straight edge and then you go along. You'll need a feeler gauge. So this is a feeler gauge you can get at AutoZone or anything like that. And you'll go along, you'll just kind of try and press it under the edge for different thicknesses so that you can figure out where it's low. You want to do this on the X like this, so like this, as well as if you turn it and go like this. Then you'll also do it 2 ways or 3 ways on top here. One where it's flat up like this, one in the middle, and one here. And then lastly, you'll want to turn it 90 degrees and go along there, 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 and there, checking just to make sure and see it hasn't warped. If it's warped again, the feeler gauge will go under, and then you'll know how bad it is. They can machine these up to about 10 thousandths of an inch, because that's how much of a new gasket you can get. Because if you have to get some of it machined off because it warped, then you gotta put in a thicker gasket so they don't change your volume in your cylinder or change your compression, so then you'll get knocking otherwise if you put in the wrong gasket after you have it machined. So you want to do that exact same thing though for the block. Same places and stuff, go along and make sure that your block has not warped either. But again, like I said, that's unlikely with the aluminum head, but still should check it while you got everything here and get everything clean too. So another note, a lot of confusion about whether or not these things have an EGR valve. Well, the answer is some of these heads do and some of them don't. From what I can tell, the heads 2000 and prior had EGR valves, and 2000 after did not. And you can tell by if you go to the cam sensor side, right down here, if you got holes, well, if you got a valve, the EGR valve would be here if you had it. If your head should have it, you'd have holes. So it would be right here if you had an EGR valve. But like I said, I think after 2000 they stopped putting them in. So just FYI. Okay, just a note about taking the rockers off, in case you need to do that to put them on your new head, or in case you just want to do it to get a look at your cam, or anyway. So the tightening pattern for this one, they don't really have like a 1 through 10, they just have like these is 1, then these is 2, then these is 3, then 4 out here, and then 5. So I guess, they're not connected, so it's just basically one shaft at a time. You want to do that because there's two shafts right here. Here's your intake shaft that your rocker arms, and then there's your exhaust shaft, and then your cam will run right down the center of this. So if you want to take those off, that's how you do it. You'll just loosen those, starting on out and working your way in. Do the quarter turn thing. Okay, got my new head in. Just got to work on kind of swapping over some of the parts now, specifically on the side camshaft sensor. Got to take that off. 4 8mm bolts. Got to get that off. Then see here, right here is that engine coolant temperature sensor. Got to take that off. I took that off with a big socket. I think I used my 3/4 socket. It's probably the right millimeter size, or yeah, millimeter size, but I didn't have it. Anyway, so a big socket around that to take that off. And put that in the new one. That needs to be torqued down to 156 inch-pounds. 156 inch-pounds for that one. Next up, with the cam shaft position sensor on, those are going to need to be torqued to 80 millimeters. So for this one, you can use your mid-size torque wrench, but for these, you'll need one of the small guys that has 1/4 inch drive. So 8 inch-pounds for these 4 here. Quick note on the camshaft position sensor: if you're not replacing it, you want to take a look at your old one, make sure the seal looks good, and make sure that the sealing surface on the new head looks good as well. If your seal looks bad here, you'll want to replace it just so you don't get some leaking oil there. And as another note, for pretty much all the bolts that I put in here, unless I specifically mention it, I'm probably going to put some anti-seize, some thread anti-seize on to all the bolts. Just make it easier if I ever got to take anything out later on. So. Okay, next thing that you want to do, depending on how your new head came, is put the front oil seal in for the cam. Just take a big socket, just slightly bigger than this outer diameter here. Have its inner diameter be slightly bigger than this outer diameter, and then just tap on it with a rubber mallet and get it in place. If you're using the same head and you're just replacing the seal, note how far in the previous seal was, so that you can make sure that it goes in at least that far. Yeah. Okay, now that I got everything all set on the new head, it's time to make sure that I got everything ready here on the block. So remove my protector that I had just sitting there for a while. So I'm going to get number 1 back on top dead center aligned with its timing mark, and then make sure the cam is also in that spot, so that they don't hit when I set the new head on. Then I'll make sure you clean this out first. Get everything all nice and clean. I used some sprayed air in there. I sucked it with a vacuum, wiped up with paper towel, a bunch of different things, and then I'll spray a little oil around the cylinder walls to make sure those were lubricated. But you want to make sure this is all set up and ready to go, and everything back in alignment. So when you set it down, everything goes nicely there, and you don't bend your valves when you set your head on the block. Yeah. Alright, I just want to point out what I'm doing here to make sure everything's looking good to get timed before we put the head on. Again, remember, this all has to be timed. So we got to make sure that when we get the head on initially that they're close. So we'll do this through top dead center. Okay, so get number 1 cylinder top dead center, which is again on the timing mark on the side, right? So go down. It's going to be right there where your previous, see that white mark right there? You want to get those lined up. See, I'm a little bit past, but I'll turn that back, get that lined up. And you got to go over to your head. If it's your old head, you should still be in the same spot. But if you get a new one like mine, what I just found out was I looked at it and I saw that my valves were open here. So that's not right, because you don't want these open, because you see when the valves are open, there, if you look from the side, they stick out past the head. So that's interference. If that's like that, that cylinder will come up and it'll bend the valve right there. So you got to get this set up. So if you look, you find your mark on your cam and make sure that's up, pointed vertically. Okay, that's, again, if the back plate were on here, you could see where the timing mark is for this, but effectively it's straight vertical this. So you got to get that notch. I had to put my cam bolt back in so that I could actually turn it over. But then your notch here basically is going to be pointed straight down relative to the head. But you want to get your timing mark in there. So that way, you can see here the only valves that are open are my valves on cylinder 3, which is no problem because cylinder 3 is down right now. So I'll be able to put the head on and then do my final adjustments. But I just want to make sure that they're close initially, because otherwise when I set the head on, it would have bent the valves on cylinder 1. So you want to make sure that all your timing is approximately correct before you even put the head on. Okay, got the exhaust manifold gasket on. Just put in some couple bolts here, just a little part way through to hold it up. The tape there is not taping on the gasket, it's just holding the bolt, so if the bolt falls through, it doesn't go far and I don't have to chase it down. But get the gasket in place and kind of held in place so that when you put the head in, then you can slide the rest of the bolt through and get it tightened in. Okay, the new head's in. Was a little tricky keeping the exhaust manifold on and getting everything to line up, but put the head gasket on, obviously, and then just kind of set it in. I had to do another one kind of going at an angle to get the engine coolant sensor under here, and then once that was in, then just kind of set it on. It's got 2 locating dowels, one on the bottom right here and then one in the back left, and so you want to make sure those seat, and you'll feel when they seat, but then you can check, make sure that the head is tight against the block, and you know, kind of push on it, make sure it's not rotating or anything, make sure it's nice and stable on there. But then when you do this like how I did it with the exhaust in the back, then you got to make sure that your exhaust gasket's in there. So that's why I kind of had those 2 bolts on there before to do it, and I got those bolts just in there very loose right now, just holding that gasket in place. But you can kind of feel it once you get the gasket in there. You know, just make sure it's all lined up and hasn't fallen through. Okay, so you just want to be careful of that. But how I did it, like I showed, was just 2 bolts kind of holding it up. And then I put the head in place and pressed it in there, and then I just kind of had to use my fingers and move the gasket around a little bit to be able to get it to allow all the bolts through, and I knew that it was in a nice kind of place. So it's hard to see, but you can kind of feel around with your fingers and get an idea of what's going on. Okay, so next up is put the new head bolts in. So remember, some of these are longer than others. There's my old ones. I believe the inside 4 are the longer ones. There's 10 of them, so the inside 6 are the longer ones. So you want to get those in. They say to lightly oil them, so I'm just going to lightly oil them, set them in there, and then I'll talk through how to. Okay, looking at the torque specs here for the cylinder head bolts. So I got a 2005, so see that 2003 or later. So step 1 says to go to 25, that's foot-pounds. So 25 foot-pounds on step 1. Step 2, tighten bolts 1 through 6 to 50. Bolts 7 through 10, those are the smaller ones on the outside, to 35. Step 3, 1 through 6 to 50. 7 through 10, 35. Maybe that's just a recheck because that's the same thing. And then step 4, tighten all bolts an additional 90 degrees quarter turn. And you got to use an angle torque gauge to do that. So I'll show you how to do that. Now again, here the tightening order. We got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. Okay, so tightened my first round. I did all 10. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Did all those to 10 pounds. Then I did them all to 25 pounds. Then I did just the middle 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 to 50. And the outside 7, 8, 9, 10 to 35. So 50 to 35. Then I went back and checked them again. So checked 50 on all these 6. And then 35 on these again. That's what the book said. Then the next thing that the book says, so they say just 25 first. I did 10. Then second step, 50, 35, 50, 35 again. And then step 4, tighten all bolts an additional 90 degrees or quarter turn. So I'm going to use my torque angle gauge to do that. They say if you don't have that, you can just paint a mark and turn it by eye, but obviously this is the more ideal solution there. Okay, now that the head's on and tightened, next thing that I'm going to do is get the cam sprocket on, get that tightened down and torqued, so that I can then get my timing belt on and make sure that everything's going good with timing before I spend any time putting anything else. Okay, first I had to put the timing cover on. You see there's 2 bolts there that are diagonal to the camshaft. Those are 8mm. You got to torque them down to 105, so you're using a little torque wrench again. But remember, with the little torque wrench, you got to be careful not to over tighten them. I usually just use 2 fingers so that I don't miss when the torque wrench goes off. But 105 inch-pounds for those little guys, and there's also a third one down on top of the water pump. Okay, to get the 18mm cam shaft sprocket bolt on, see I got my torque wrench on here, 85 foot-pounds. 85 foot-pounds is that. And then got my chain wrench on here with a shop towel to make sure I don't scratch this. Again, because you don't want the cam moving while you're doing this. So with this way I could really get some good leverage on it, because 85 is pretty hard. So you put one end here, one end here, and then just make sure it doesn't move and tighten her up. It's to 85. So. Okay, next up is to put the timing belt tensioner on. I won't be able to show this once I get it in there, but I want to do it while it's out so everyone can see. So there's these little marks right here, these little notches, and then there's this spring here. Well, once you get it on and tightened, how you know how much to tension this is you'll actually take this and turn it. So you'll turn this housing with a wrench on that right there, or a 1/4-inch wrench in here, and then you'll tighten it with this one. But you're going to turn this until that spring is right in between those marks. So that's how you know how far to tension this. So just a heads up on that. But next up, to install this, we got 13mm bolts right there we got to put in. Okay, I found the easiest way to get at the tensioner was from the side. If you go down, and then right there you can access the 2 bottom bolts. Torque them up to 23 foot-pounds, those 13mm bolts, the 2 on the bottom. Then you're ready to get your belt on. So to do that, you want to line up your timing mark here on your crank. Make sure that's perfectly lined up. Then go up and also line up your timing mark here on your cam. So you got your marker here, and then you'll look, and then on the cam you'll see a little notch, a little nick. And that's, can't really see it there, but that's where you want to line that up. Let's see if I can zoom in and see mine. Yeah, so you see that little nick there? You want to line that up with your mark on your timing, or on your timing belt cover. Once you get those 2 on, you can put your timing belt on. Okay, I got my belt on. I got a used belt. Remember how I marked it? So I marked it which way I had to go clockwise. I saw that mark here where I had it next to the notch for the cam timing. So my cam timing is still lined up with here. I know I got my belt in the exact same place it was. It goes down, it goes over the water pump, and it's nice and taut here. It's not loose, like it feels like it's off a tooth. And then down under here, you see I still got my mark here even on my belt, so I know it's in the same tooth here. If you're putting on a belt, you should put it on the crank first. It's pretty tight fit in there, so put it on the crank first and then lift it up over the cam and then on the water pump and then put it on the tensioner. So this looks good for me. My timing marks are still lined up. I think the belt's in the exact same spot it was when I took it off. So I'm ready to tighten it up with the 1/4" drive in the side. Again, it's a 1/4" drive in the side of the tensioner there. Kind of hard to see, but 1/4" drive in the side of that, and then you'll tighten it according to the specs on the book. Let's see here, 2002. So 2002, it's a mechanical tensioner. Some people also wonder, do these have hydraulic or mechanical? Well, the answer is after 2002 they started having mechanical. Prior to that, it looks like it was hydraulic. Anyways, so you'll tighten that tensioner lock nut there to 22 foot-pounds once you get it in place. Remember before I showed you that spring, you had to kind of wind it up so that the spring lined up between those two grooves. So you got, once it's in there, then you'll tighten it to 22 foot-pounds. Here's a good diagram showing how to tighten the mechanical tensioner, but more importantly how it's supposed to line up when you look at it from the side, how the spring is supposed to line up in those two grooves. They say Allen wrench here, but mine's a 1/4" drive, not an Allen wrench. So, alright, so I got it on there in tension. Basically I just kind of lowered the engine a bit and then took my phone and was able to look up above. Otherwise there's not really a good way to look and see accurately. Thanks, Chrysler. So what I just used my phone, I was able to get a good video with the light on my phone and turn it and tighten it. So I'll show you that video. But yeah. Alright, so here's a video of me tightening it on my phone. Just getting it right in the middle there. And then I'll now tighten the lock nut with my wrench. Okay, so now that the timing belt is tight, so you'll be able to feel every area should feel nice and tight. Make sure your timing marks are still lined up there on your crank on the bottom as well as up on your cam. And then you want to go and you want to turn it over at least 2 times, if not more, and check after you've done that to make sure that they're still lined up. Okay, I got my timing all set. Turned it over 8 or so times, and the timing on the cam and the crank are still perfectly on, and that's what you want. If they're off even a little bit, you want to reset and start over. The timing is really not something you want to mess with, especially on an interference engine like this. It's not a problem you want to have. So if it's off at all or looks wrong, just retry it. Should be perfect. Yeah. So once you have that, then you know the engine's timed, and you're not going to have any issues. That's a good next step. Okay, at this point I'm replacing some seals here, so I took my pick and picked out the old seals here on the intake, so 4 seals there. Next up I'm going to replace the seal on my valve cover, so I got a new seal for that, as well as I'm going to replace the 4 seals that go around the spark plugs here, because I got new ones of those. Okay, I got the new spark plug well seals in. I'd start with those. A little tough to get the old ones out, kind of had to pry on it with a screwdriver. Then use your big socket to hammer them in. So obviously set them on the floor or something, or not on the floor, something hard, like wood or something like that, a bench, so that you can get those in. Then go ahead and put your seal around. I found putting in like these edges or corners, use U-shaped things first, and then pressing kind of in the middle and around, and then evenly smoothing it out so you don't thin out the gasket in any one place. It worked well. Well, I was going to start to get ready to put the thermostat on, and I realized that this nipple that was originally down here is no longer there, or it's not there on the new head. So I had to go and pull that off the old head. I gotta get that cleaned up, and then I'll put that on the new head. Okay, get that nipple off, put it back on here. I couldn't find torque specs for it in the book, but since it's the same thread as the engine coolant temperature sensor, I figured probably just keep it at that. So 165 inch-pounds on that one. Now I just gotta get the hose clamps that are down here back on, and then that'll be all set. Put the mounting bolt in there, and then it's also got that mounting bolt that goes up here. Okay, got those 10mm bolts back in place. Had to put the bracket back. Couldn't find torque spec on those. Put about 105 inch-pounds on them, considering that the 8mm for the cover here were only 80, and these are 10mm. So I tightened them with a wrench, kind of got them snug, what felt good for me. Put the torque wrench on there, went about 105, and that felt pretty good. So 105 inch-pounds on those. Yeah, next up, gonna put the intake in, and after I replace the seals, and then put the intake in there. Okay, intake is on with there's one down here, 2, 3, 4, and 5. And those are 8mm, and you torque them down to 105 inch-pounds. Now that that's on, we got the two support. So behind here there was a support bolt that holds the intake, and then behind here as well there's another one. So you want to get both of those in. Remember, you're screwing, they're like self-tapping screws into plastic, so you want to be real gentle. No torque spec on that, just by hand, but you're screwing into plastic, so be careful. Okay, now that the intake's on, we got to run our wiring harness back through. We got our map sensor down here, and then also there was our plug for our AC clutch. For all electrical connections, I use dielectric grease. So put a little bit of this on all the connections to make sure that they're connecting well. Just another thing you can do. So I'll be doing that on all the plugs that I connect. Okay, underneath had the knock sensor right straight down the middle. Had the connector for the starter that tells it to start, and then there was the negative, or the ground, for the starter. Had to connect that. So 3 wires from underneath that I got. Remember, map's still here in the AC clutch. Then the last wires up here, we had one for the cam sensor, kind of back in there, one for the cam position sensor, and then one up here for the engine coolant temperature sensor. Then the last plugs that you should, or the only plugs that you should have left now, are starting coil plug, and then your 4 spark plugs. And then you got this sensor here still you got attached to the back for the exhaust. Yeah, then you got hoses to attach. You got this one hose left here that's still connected. That's got to go run under the intake and then to this nipple down here. Then you got this shorty that's going to connect to this nipple right there by the air intake, and then that's going to wrap around and go in the side of the valve cover. Then the last one up here, this hose connects into the throttle, or not into the throttle body, but just near the throttle body here. There's a nipple, then it'll run around and then to the back of the valve cover. So you want to get those kind of in place. Okay, up next, put in this little air hose chunk. Basically just got 2 8mm hose clamps you got to get on. You just want to make sure you get a nice seal around there, and then you're not going to have any leaks. So really, what I did is just really loosen this up all the way, get it over, make sure it fits real nice, and then tighten her down until she's nice and hand tight there. Okay, next up, gonna tighten up the exhaust bolts. So on the back side, I hadn't done it yet. I got a towel here just to make sure I don't get any dirt in there. On the back side, I want to put in those 8 bolts there that we took out that hold the exhaust manifold to the cylinder head. So there's 8 bolts there. You'll want to use a different type of anti-seize with copper in it. This has a high temperature anti-seize, so that's what you want to be using for these bolts. For the 8 that are back there, those are going to go to 200 inch-pounds on those. And then when you put the heat shield on after it, those go to 95 inch-pounds. I believe you got two bolts holding that on. Actually, these, yeah. So 95 inch-pounds on those, 200 inch-pounds on the main ones that go into the head. Okay, so I got the exhaust manifold on with the heat shield on as well there. There was also that sensor right there. Put that on. There's another 13 millimeter, 10 millimeter to get the actual manifold on. Again, those were to 200 inch-pounds. I put this sensor to 200 inch-pounds as well as the top bigger mount for the heat guard, and then the two little 8 millimeters on either side I went to 95 inch-pounds. So that's it for that. Next up we got the timing belt cover. So if you'll notice on this, it's got a lip kind of in the top here, so this upper lip. So basically you're going to take it and you're going to slide it over the upper lip here, and then press it in, and then you got two little 8 millimeter headed bolts there, and those are going to go to 105 inch-pounds. Okay, had one more timing belt cover bolt put in, another 8 millimeter there, 105 inch-pounds. And I also took the crank damper bolt out to get ready to put the plate in. So now we're going to put the plate. So effectively what I'm going to try and do is just set the top timing cover over the plate. And I'm thinking that'll give me enough gap to just kind of slide it down in. That's at least the hope. Just trying to figure out a way to get that in there. Okay, I just wanted to get a shot of how high I kind of had to get the motor in order to be able to get this thing in there. You can see I pretty much got it to where this plate all the way up in there. I was able to grab my light, sorry. So like, plate was pretty much all the way there, so where that through mount basically goes all the way up a little bit past that, so that way I can get the bolt in there. So 15 millimeter bolts. Couldn't find a torque spec on them, but they're 10 millimeter thread size. Looked at that in the book. It said about 28 to 40, so I went with about 30 pounds on them. So 30 foot-pounds on both of those. And then now I'll lower the engine, and then there's just the one underneath that we'll need to get. Okay, I had to lower the engine to get at that bottom plate bolt there. So again, it's another 15 millimeter. Went to 30 foot-pounds. I will note that I did have to take off this mount, not to go down, but when I had to go all the way up, so I had to take that out to do that. Okay, so next up we'll be raising it back up, getting that motor mount attached, and then going through with the Torx bolt into the that plate that we just got mounted. Okay, T55 Torx, torque to 21 foot-pounds. Then the 18 millimeter torque to about 70 foot-pounds. That one's not official really. I just figured the book says somewhere between 60 and 80 for that type of bolt. So since it's not in something huge behind it, about 60 foot-pounds in that, or 70 foot-pounds in that. So. Okay, next up, it's going to be this upper torque mount. So the one that bolts in here. And then into here. Okay, reading over the book, and just FYI, all the torque strut mounts, they need to be at 87. So with this bolt that we just did, that's got to be at 87 foot-pounds. And then these two bolts that we're going to do, they got to be 87 too. But what I wanted to point out was this. So if you look at the two pillars here, so from this pillar back to this hole has got to be 4.7 inches. And again, torque to this bolt torque to, and this bolt torque to 87 foot-pounds, as well as this one here that we just did. Okay, next up, got my thermostat back in place and the thermostat housing. So put the thermostat inside and then put this housing on. It's got two bolts, 10 millimeters on top, and then on the bottom down there, those torque to 105 inch-pounds. Next up, power steering pump's got to go in. 6 bolts there, 3 on each side. Remember, when you're coming in from the side, you got to go between the holes on the pulley to get that in there. Okay, power steering pump is on. Again, the 3 bolts on the side, they kind of go in like this, 2 above each other and then one out, so look kind of like that. And then there's the 2 in the side here, 1 here and then 1 below it. Those go to, all 5 go to 250 inch-pounds. Next up, just a couple small things. Got to connect this back to here. Got a hose support clamp that connects with 2 grounds down in there. Looks like a 10 millimeter there for that. This also looks like a 10 millimeter. And then I got to put this hose in that runs from here up to the radiator. So I'll do all that. Quick note on this hose clamp holder and grounding connection here. So it goes up, and then you also, I forgot, you got to attach this one too. This runs down and then to the back of the head. There's a 13 millimeter bolt back there that, my finger is kind of in here, that you got to put on. So for both of those, I just did good and tight. Next up, this 10 millimeter, and then putting that hose in from there. Okay, got the fuel rail on here, connected with the hose. That's 2 13 millimeters. That torque to 200 inch-pounds. Then put the injector plugs or wires back on. Okay, gotta get the crank pulley on. Before that, there was 2 10 millimeter, or actually they were the 8 millimeter timing cover bolts. 1 to the bottom left and 1 to the bottom right. Those were again torqued to 105 inch-pounds. After that, so just kind of lightly put the pulley on over, and then I went to the hardware store and bought some threaded rod here. That was because this bolt wasn't long enough once you had it on there. So this is M12 by 1.75. So I just bought some M12 by 1.75 threaded rod and then a nut so that I can just basically, I screwed this in quite a ways with my hand to make sure I got enough thread inside the crank shaft. And then I'll just twist this with a 19 millimeter wrench to press the pulley on. Okay, I just wanted to get a video of how I torqued on the crank. So big slot screwdriver went down. It's pressing up against the cast iron here. You want to make sure that you're not touching the plastic or not going to hit the plastic timing cover, otherwise you will break it, because you got to go to 100 foot-pounds on that 19 millimeter bolt. Okay, you got the 2 belts to put on. This one right here goes up back on the alternator. That one's got to go on first because it's in the back. Put that in from below. Then you got this one here that goes up and runs around. It actually goes straight up to the power steering pump. Then back around, you can actually see it here. So it goes up the power steering pump. So I put this one in from the top. So slid it down from the top. Then you got to basically relieve the tension on the tensioner. So to do that, effectively you just take a 17 millimeter wrench, and there's a little kind of like a slot, like a little thing you can kind of grab on the edge in there, just kind of like that. You can see it, you can see the wrench. So you just kind of grab the wrench on there like that, and then that allows you to pull back on your wrench. And that'll loosen the tension on the belt, so then you can slide the belt over all the pulleys. For the back alternator belt, you'll need a 15 millimeter and a 13 millimeter. The 15 millimeter is for the tightening bolt, and then the 13 millimeter is for like a piece of, it's like a threaded bolt that actually puts the tension on. So you can kind of see it through here. Okay, so this bolt here, going from the top, that's your one you turn to add tension, and then this one over here is your 15, and that's what you tighten once you get it to the right tension. Okay, both the belts are on and tightened. Got that one tightened back there. I just felt the front belt, how tight that was, in order to feel how tight I should get the alternator belt down there. So now that that's on, I'm going to put in my spark plugs now. Bought some new spark plugs to put in. Some NGK V-Power spark plugs in order to be able to go back to a different brand. So I bought some platinum ones before, and there's some people talking on forums that wasn't a good idea. So figured I'd try these to see if maybe spark plugs were my issue before or whatever. But anyways, so gonna put those in according to the specs. Let's see here. spark plug for 2005. I need to set a gap of 44 thousandths of an inch. So I'll set that gap on these spark plugs and then install them. And then the torque spec for spark plugs, let's see there, spark plugs at the bottom, so that's 156 inch-pounds. Okay, a couple smaller things. Clipped in my washer fluid hose in there. I'll go over here and put the fuel pump relay back in. So that's good to go. The next thing that I'm going to do is get my coolant back in. Since I'm not doing a complete flush, can't remember exactly what kind of coolant I had before. I'm just using some pressed stone here that says that it works with any color antifreeze. So you want to make sure you do that if you're not going to do a good flush. It's cold here in the UP, so I'm going to try and do kind of a mix. I don't need quite minus 80 Fahrenheit protection, but I would like a little bit better than minus 30. So I'm probably going to do like a 60-40 mix with distilled water. Okay, you want to make sure you use distilled water, so that way you don't get any of the vitamins or not the minerals that are in like tap water or the chlorine or anything like that build up inside your engine block. So I'm just using my funnel. Pour this in first, pour this in after, and then once I get the engine running and everything like that, I'll use a checker to make sure that I'm at a temperature rating that is sufficient. Just a quick note, cooling capacities, so that's 6.5 quarts, so you want to know that 6.5 quarts is what you may expect to add, so when you do your ratios you know how much to add of the pressed stone initially. Okay, got the coolant going in. Just note that, it takes some time because there's like air bubbles and stuff, and so you gotta pour a little bit, let it sit and wait, and you won't even be able to put it all in right away because you're gonna have to wait till the engine warms up and the thermostat opens in order to get the rest of it going. So it's going to be a little bit of a process. But the last couple of steps in this project, I'm going to take some oil. I emailed the people I bought the head from, and they didn't say you had to do this, but I think it'd be a good idea because you don't want to run it dry. Just take some oil and just pour it along the cam and in the rockers and stuff so that they're not running dry for the first little bit there. I'll do that, then I'll put the timing or the valve cover on. Once I get the valve cover on, I got a couple hoses to connect. Got this hose and then this side hose here, and then that'll put the valve cover on. And so you got all those bolts you got to torque, and you want to torque them evenly. Then you got the coil, the 4 bolts for the coil, and those are all of those are 10 millimeter. And then you got to put the coil wires, coil plugs on the spark plugs, and you're even closer. I think then the last thing that we have is just to put the negative on the battery. Okay, got the valve cover on. So you got these 10 bolts. If you put a new gasket on, you're going to have to kind of do it in some stages, just because you got to compress the gasket for the first time. So I did in this order: 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, just like the head, to get kind of even distribution. I did them kind of to relative tightness first, and then I went and torqued them, so in that same order. So torqued them to 105 inch-pounds. Then I put the attached the hoses here. You got one hose here, one hose in the back. Then you got the ignition coil. That's got 4, still 10 millimeters, the same as these. You got 4 of those, torqued to 105. You got to put your plug in, and then you got this red tab you got to push in like that. Then your plug wires here, make sure those go in the right order. There's like longer ones and shorter ones that kind of help, but it needs to look like this: 1, 2, 3, and 4. And it actually has the numbers on here too if you want to just confirm to make sure you're in the right spot. Dielectric grease, or make sure that there are good connections on both sides of these, so that you're good to go. When you push these in, you'll feel kind of a snap as it goes over the top of the spark plug, so you want to make sure you feel that. Then that should be all set. Next thing, attach the negative on the battery. Okay, getting ready to start it. With any project, before you start it, you want to do a general inspection of the area. Look all over, everywhere you were. Make sure there's no loose wrenches in there, nothing that could fall and hit, like a belt, for example, or something that could get caught in a belt. Like, I want to remove this just to make sure that when it starts, nothing can get caught in the belt. You know, take a look under, make sure there's nothing in your way or anything like that. You want to make sure that yeah, everything is all clear before you try and start it. Okay, also remember you want to put that panel back that's back there. You got those three 10mm bolts there. I just got them kind of tight. They're self-tapping on some thin sheet metal, so don't go too tight with them, just nice and kind of a little snug. Then put your tire back on. Your wheel nuts go to 100 foot-pounds is what you want to torque. Okay, once you're in the car, since we depressurized the fuel rail, we need to repressurize it before we start. So you don't just want to go and turn it over right away. You want to go, turn the ignition on. If you listen in the back right on the passenger side, you should hear the fuel pump prime it. So you want to do this 2 or 3 times. So shut it off again, bring it to the ignition. You're just trying to listen to make sure it sounds like that your fuel pump is pressurizing. And you want to do that about 2 or 3 times. Okay, once you get the engine running, you want to be double checking your oil, make sure that your oil is good. Obviously looking underneath to make sure you don't have any leaks or nothing's looking bad there. Checking your coolant, making sure that your coolant's staying topped off. In general, listening too is important, making sure there's no weird sounds or anything like that. Yeah, listening for, I don't know, it's kind of hard to explain what you listen for, but you just want to be listening for different sounds. In general, when you're working on cars, what the car is saying in terms of the noise it's making tells you a lot about what's going on. So you want to try and be tuning your ears to the different sounds that it makes. But overall, for me, say the project is done. Happy to have it done. Took a while, so you want to make sure if you're planning to do this project yourself that you have plenty of time and plenty of space, and hopefully you have plenty of nice temperature. For me, I got quite a bit of snow out there, so been cold, but happy to have it done.